Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our family engagement, engaging and empowering families as early learning stakeholders, professional learning opportunity. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. We're probably all old hat at this by now, so just up at the top of your screen, you'll see that little icon. If you'll just click on that so I can see hands go up. I know everyone can hear me, and we're going to jump right into our conversation. We're all excited to have you here today. We've got a very robust and rigorous agenda, so I'm going to literally move straight ahead. As Karen said, thank you guys so much for raising your hand. Let me know that you hear me. And as Karen said, if you start having any technical difficulties along the way, reach out to her, and she will make sure that she works with you to make sure everything is okay. As Karen Odmanson already said, this is sponsored by Early Childhood Professional Learning. You are now hearing the voice of Dr. Antoinette Taylor. You are looking at Illinois AEYC. This is kind of a two-parter. I do see some familiar names from last week. We did actually early childhood education and care, pre-K to K transition, and Stephanie Hurling, who is the president of Illinois AEYC, was able to join that webinar. And we mentioned the conference that is coming up, and a lot of you had asked, reached out for wanting information. So, oh, hey, Stephanie, I didn't see your name. Woohoo! Thanks. Stephanie Hurling is the president of Illinois AEYC. Their conference, for obvious reasons, has been switched to a virtual conference, and she and her team are feverishly working on transitioning everything virtually. She shared the information in the chat last time and was able to give me a slide to just share with everyone so that you can see that save the date information. I have been given permission to say yours truly. I'll be doing some sessions and have been asked to do a keynote on justice for all, equity, empathy, and excellence in education. So I hope you all will be able to join Illinois AEYC, and kudos to you, Stephanie, and your team for transitioning everything so quickly to a virtual format. My presenters today are Dr. Cristina Pacione-Zayas, Grace Araya, Iris, and Jaclyn Vasquez. You'll hear from them a little bit later. I am really excited to kind of yield the floor right now. We are able to have with us, I'm calling a special guest, a good friend of mine, Sergio Hernandez. He is the Director of Family and Community Engagement with the Illinois State Board of Education. I'm going to yield the floor just so he can come on and say hello to all of us. He's going to be with us the entire time today, but I want to yield the floor to Sergio right now.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. Thank you for everybody who's participating in this particular webinar, taking the time to participate and learn about how, again, our families are, again, always the first teachers of our children. My name is Sergio Hernandez. I am the director of the new Department of Family and Community Engagement over the Illinois State Board of Education. You may hear my son, who's right behind me. He's working hard on Fortnite on his computer. Again, this is a family webinar, so again, as many of you are doing, we're all dealing with working, but also being caretakers, right? And now having to be educators. And what does that look like now, and what tools and resources can we get in order to best meet the needs of our child and in our role as parents during this difficult pandemic? So again, I'm here to learn and to share. So what I'll be learning from here, I'll be sharing through our resources page over at the State Board of Education website. But again, very happy to join all of you and count on me as a resource. And I also want to just announce, we're also feverishly planning a statewide return to school parent convening that's going to engage parent advocacy groups that are statewide, as well as trying to get state leadership from different state agencies, not just ISB, to have a conversation and a listening session around ensuring that we're delivering the highest quality services to educational service to families across the state. So look forward for some of that information. I'm working with folks from the Illinois PTA, Kofi. We have Raise Your Hand Illinois, and just quite a few different organizations that are doing some incredible work already. And again, looking forward to this webinar, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Sergio. And if you will get that information to myself and Karen, we'll do whatever we can to make sure it gets out through the channels of ECPL. And as you know, I am the chairperson of the Illinois Attendance Commission, and believe you me, we've had quite a few phone calls and emails of just a lot about engaging families and the impact that has on attendance. So I'll be in touch with you offline for sure to see how the Attendance Commission can support that in any way. So thank you so much for sharing that crucial information. This is me, a little bit about who I am. I'm going to move so quick here to transition us into making sure lots of us are on today, and I know Karen is still getting more people in the room. This webinar is actually at capacity, so we may not get to every single chat. If you have any unanswered questions, clarifying questions, wonderings, missed chat responses, you can directly reach me through my website, and we will collect those and make sure that between ECPL, Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, ISB, Illinois Action for Children, Erickson, we will continue to work together to make sure that we meet your needs. So again, if you miss anything, you had an unanswered question, please reach out and we'll make sure that we get back in touch with you. One way or another, someone will be able to get back in touch with you regarding this particular webinar. So who are we today? If you would, in the chat, go ahead and put your role. Oh, I'm sorry, this is going to be right in the middle so we can get kind of a percentage. Are you an administrator, consultant, teacher? If you are a teacher, pre-K, K, or other, please put that in the chat. And you'll see further down, if you are other, such as a consultant, anything like that, anything that we missed, put that in the chat as well. Okay, Amy already. Now, I'm an equal opportunity professional learning presenter, but already, Amy, you are my best friend on Facebook because you just said special education. So, woohoo, special educators rock. Hi, Connie, how are you? Glad to have our kids coaches with us today. I'm really excited when I see K3, and I'm seeing that a lot. Those of you who are familiar with the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee report, you know that we're really, really trying to, first of all, understand that transition is not a one-time thing from pre-K to K, but as much as we can have holistic programming from K3, pre-K, and K, we'll just do all of our families and our children. We'll do them a world of service. I want to do one more quick shout out to Christina, first grade teacher. Love having you on. And our related services personnel such as Michelle. This work that we're going to be doing this upcoming year, really all the time, but now more than ever, having all of our heads together and all of our disciplines together is going to make all of our lives so much easier. And so the next thing I'm going to ask you to do, just so we can get a better idea of the type of program or class you have and where you are located. That came up when we did the webinar before on transitions, and we are really, everyone, doing the best that we can, and you will continue to hear me say this every time that we have a webinar or professional learning opportunity. Are we making sure that we are collaborating with our community-based organizations, Head Start, Child Care, Archdiocese? All of us need to make sure that we're working together. And so as you're looking on here and you're seeing Chicago Public Schools, so Linda, if you were Chicago Public Schools, are you reaching out to your Head Start organizations or community-based organizations that might be around the particular school that you work with? We definitely want to make sure that, you know, for lack of a better phrase, we leave no child, no family, no one outside of the realm of this work. So as we're sharing please, please reach out to make sure that you are connecting with everyone. If you're in a school district, what's in your surrounding area? Hey, Elizabeth from Greater East St. Louis. How are you today? I've just been in so many conversations with some folks at your district working feverishly to get things up and running for you all. So I'm so happy to see East St. Louis is with us today as well as everyone. But I just real quick want to reiterate again, make sure that you're reaching out to the people who are around you. None of us have all of the answers, and the more that we reach out to each other, I think the better off we're going to be. And now if you just go ahead and type, you're going to see a center screen come up. Your reason, what you hope to learn from our time together today. Briefly share what you hope to gain by joining the conversation today, and that's going to come up in the middle. And everything that's in the middle is anonymous, so please be as candid as you like to be. And this is a safe place, again, to hold your confidences. Yes, strategies to share with programs, administrators, and teachers, how to support families who, as Sergio said, our families have always been our first and most important teacher, but now they are like the first teacher, the last teacher, the home teacher. So much has been placed upon our families in this moment in time. How can we really engage them and let them know that they are our true stakeholders? And that was specific for this title. Family members are stakeholders. When we come to the table, whether it's a virtual or a physical table, we want them to know that their voices is equally powerful and important as all of ours. So I'm seeing a lot here that's almost like half and half. How do we do this virtually? But just how do we do this all together? So I think we're in a great position to do that. Before we do that, though, I do have to kind of share some first things first with you all. We want you to know that there are some systems in place that cannot be ignored. So nothing that is said today is meant to prevent or circumvent the federal laws of the land, IDEA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, everything you see here, including ESSA. More importantly, our State Board of Education, as well as our governor, has been giving us guidelines that for us to consider as all of us, as we consult, as we move through remote or learning or for 2021. Nothing that is said here today is meant to prevent, again, or impede that. And then lastly, as districts and directors of programs are coming up with what their initial phases are going to be like as we move into the 2021 school year, all of those things take precedent. Having said that, Joe, I do have some breaking news for all of us that I want to call your attention to. What I'm calling the Omnibus Education Act bill. SB 1569, which is now known as Public Act 1010643, was signed by Governor Pritzker. It became effective July 1, and there are some very specific things in this law that speak to students with an IEP as it relates to family engagement. And so here's what it is. We must be very, very careful in our state now that families are to receive a draft of all written materials 3 days in advance of any IEP meeting. They are able to choose the method of delivery. This includes an eligibility meeting where there's initial eligibility, a special evaluation as well. And for an IEP meeting, written materials include all, and that word all, I bold printed it on purpose, all IEP components that will be the focus of any meeting. This has always been best practice, but in Illinois it is law now, and I'm going to go back to that slide that says first things first. Believe me when I tell you, advocates all over this country are doing everything they can with a microscopic lens to make sure that IDEA, Rehabilitation Act, ADA is not circumvented in any way, shape, or form. while we are in this period of remote learning or dealing with COVID-19. So please, please do yourself a favor. Be in touch with your school counselor or case manager to make sure that whatever you need to do to support this practice, if you are in a publicly funded program, district, Head Start, PFA, this applies to you. So I just wanted to share that with you all again, and this will not stop because you might be in a situation where you are not at a face-to-face learning opportunity. If it is remote, hybrid, a face-to-face, virtual, whatever, this law is applicable in our state. So I just want to make sure that you are all very much aware of that. And then very quickly, I just want to give you my own, I have like these golden rules, word to the wise. Family is the expert in living with and parenting their child. This is the honest to God truth, and I try to do all of my consulting with districts or anything that I'm doing. The family is the expert. They are the only one that knows what it's like to live with the child, to parent that child. And this is my 16, 36, 61 rule, whether that parent is 16, 36, or 61. Whether it's a young child, a middle-aged adult, or grandma or nana, they are still the expert in raising their child. And then my second little tip is what I like to call, are you my mother? And so oftentimes when I'm in schools or I'm in meetings, I hear parents referred to as mom said this, mom said that when the parent is there. And the truth is, if it's not your mother, we should address them as their last name or whatever their title is. If I get to be at a meeting and I'm Dr. Taylor or Dr. Christina Pacion-Zayas or Iris, Miss Hildreth or Mr. Hernandez, then the family member should be Mr. Jones, Miss Smith. They should go by their preferred title. And again, that is for the 16, 36, 61 rule. If it's a 16-year, yeah, but she's just a baby, we still want to address her as Miss Jones, because what that does is lets them know that we consider them the experts, and everything that they say, agree with it or not, they are the expert in that conversation as it relates to their child. So those are just my little tidbits of moving into this family engagement conversation, and I'm going to now yield the floor to my co-presenters, and I'll circle back a little bit later.
Good afternoon, everybody. Had to come off of mute. I'm going to first say thank you. I definitely appreciate being here and being invited to co-present with Dr. Taylor. And I'm also going to ask people to raise their hand just so I can make sure I can be heard. I know sometimes we have some sound issues. Thank you, everyone. I can see that. Thank you. So I'm also going to speed by so I can stay true to my time and make sure I give the appropriate time to my colleagues. So that's me. I am now the Family Engagement Manager with the Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development, which on the next slide, you'll see a little bit of my background. So I'm going to start right in with my time. What I'm going to do is think of or use family engagement through a framework of how we engage and empower families through looking at the Kindergarten Transition Report, which is the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Report, the three focus areas of that. And so if I reflect on my experience as being a teacher, so I taught for 18 years pre-K through third grade in my teaching career, and moved through various forms of education in the education field. But if I think back to my first love, which is teaching, I can remember that kindergarten transition was encompassed more of a records type scenario. And people who were on last week, this might be a little bit of review for you, but it was mainly getting those records done. We even had a day where it was a couple of days off, and we had that time to get that done. And as I'm reflective now, as you learn more and grow more, I realized, and realized actually before then, that what I missed, or what I needed to be more intentional about, was building the relationship with the parents. That at my beginning years in teaching, I realized was not something I was strong at, I had kind of I'm responsible for the child, not even thinking that, well, the child came with parents, that they are not able to be removed. That's part of that child's world, and it should be. And as Dr. Taylor just said, the parent being the expert, that's one of the things I then later on started focusing on and reflecting on. And the pre-K teacher who was next door to me was awesome in that. So I started building that relationship with her so that I could build my relationship with my parents. And it did make a difference, me being intentional about that. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking through and what I want us to think through. So you are going to see a pop-up, a poll pop-up. So in this, and we can probably do these simultaneously just for the sake of time. So the first question that I want you, and I apologize for going quickly, I want to again make sure I adhere to making sure everyone is able to have their voice today. So how do you right now engage and empower parents? And I love that this is engage and empower, because those words have a similar idea, but that can happen in different ways. I think of empowerment as a little different than engagement. So I love that both of those are included. So type in the poll, which is going to be on the left. The first question is, how do you engage and empower parents? The second question, which I'll pull up now on the screen, will be how can increasing engagement and empowering parents, impact kindergarten transition outcomes? So think of what that means for you on the left, how you're currently doing it, and then what that may impact in transition from pre-K to kindergarten, whether you're a pre-K teacher or a kindergarten teacher. How can that be impactful in that process for you? And I'll give about a minute or less. I see give tips and strategies to advocate for their child, welcome letters, okay. Providing resources and being proactive and listening. Flash Dojo, yes, I remember hearing about that a lot, using technology. We have a family support specialist. We talk to teachers about it. We provide parent training and events. Provide teachers helpful ways to think about and make connections. Giving parents a space to meet. Before COVID-19 through social interactions, I know. So awesome. And I'm seeing on the other side, how can it be impactful? It ensures that the transition activities are actually being, actually meeting the need of the families there. Personal meet and greet on what you currently do. Ongoing communication, welcome letters, weekly communications and tips, regular emails and newsletters. These are some really great, and these are really great points. And I know some people might even want to be capturing some of these ideas for themselves. I believe this will also be included in information. So if you want to capture some of those ideas, and I'm going back over to how it can be impactful, ensures transition, gives confidence, embraces change, educates teachers about resources for parents, gives family a better understanding of kindergarten expectations, assures best engagement for children to be open to their ideas and suggestions as the experts of their children. I think some of you all should be giving some of these professional development here, the webinar. Great ideas. Thank you all for sharing. I'm going to move on for time. I'm loving all of those ideas I'm seeing. So what I'm going to do is think of what you just wrote about, and we're going to think about ways that we can possibly expand that. So thinking about the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee report, which Dr. Taylor mentioned earlier, there are three main focuses in that. I'm going to combine the first two, which is align teaching and learning, and I'm going to go through my framework here. I'm just going to go through this really quick so you can see the second one, and I'll come back. And align assessment and data. So what I'm going to do is combine these two into one idea. Went too fast. And reason being that the framework that I kind of have for both of these are similar. So if we think about what are the benefits of engaging parents and families in assessment and data, as well as teaching and learning, as I'm going to combine those first two. What are the benefits of that? So if you think about that for yourself of the benefits, I'm going to move to the second question and come back. So if we think about beyond what we normally have or think of engaging parents through assessment and engaging parents through teaching and learning, a lot of times that is the teacher conference or the parent conferences, possibly milestone reports or reporting card periods for kindergarten. I know a lot of schools they have report cards now, even for the little ones. So what that means or what that could look like as far as empowering and engaging families. So this framework I have here, ways to engage parents in assessment and data, as well as teaching and learning. The idea of this came from some articles and some information I was reading with Illinois Head Start Association and some other articles I was reading, and resources, just so you all know, is at the bottom of each of these three slides in blue. So since you'll get the deck, you can go back and interact with those. But what I want to look at or focus on really quickly is this idea of being collaborative. So what does that look like? So these, the framework that you see here, if you start with, it says begin early. So before you have to make that phone call about something that went wrong or something that is a challenge, what could possibly happen is thinking about starting with collaborating with the family, with the parents, to set goals. So that might look like asking, what is the goal that you have for your child? They may give an answer that is short-term or long-term. It may be, I want my child to be a doctor. It may be, I'm concerned about my child and their social, emotional skills or their socialization skills. Or I just want my child to have better than I did. I want to break them out of this seeming family cycle of fill in the blank, and I just want better for them. Whatever answer they give is exactly what you can use and go from. So what would that look like? So the idea of using strength-based conversations as well as beginning early may be the opportunity for us to use evidence of what you're doing in your classroom to show, I am hearing you, as someone put, I listen to the parents. I'm hearing what you're saying as your goal for your child, and this is what I'm doing in the classroom. So that may be taking a picture of their child interacting in something and you putting an explanation under it. For example, if the parent that says, I want my child to be a doctor. Here's your child playing in, and this is what they did in class today, and this is, though this is play-based learning, but this is also a pre-science skill. And how this helps them become a doctor is science is very much important part of becoming a doctor. This is what this skill works on, and this is how playing through this actually either advances brain development or advances the learning skill. And what the things that you can do or that comes from that one interaction is multi-layered. So that's right there, teaching and learning in and of itself, and that you're able to teach the family about play-based learning. You're able to teach the family about how different activities support different learning mechanisms of different learning styles. It also gives a way for you to open that interaction between the family and the classroom, and that what play activities are you doing at home? You can take a picture of that and send it to me, and we can have this collaboration of how these play activities are boosting your goal for your child. And so that's just one small example of how one activity can have a multi-layered effect of addressing improvement and empowering parents in teaching and learning as well as assessment, because that they do go hand in hand together. So that is one example. And in thinking of the things that you do is how does this interaction build a relationship? So all of these things kind of come together in one idea of collaborate with the parent, that it's a strength-based conversation. It's based on the child's strength as well as the family's strength, and that you're beginning early. And that makes it a lot easier to have those difficult conversations that may come up later. The last slide I have here that I want to talk about is the similar framework of beginning early and using strength-based. The difference here is the idea of giving and receiving what I'm calling supportive grace. And that idea is just that understanding that, and I'll go right into the next slide, a part of the slide is understanding that there sometimes is this feeling that parents and families or teachers are at odds sometimes. And the idea behind this is just understanding that what is it that family may be going through that or having to work within their life that may make it difficult for you to possibly either understand or know what's going on, and vice versa, that families also need to be supportive in their grace of teachers and understanding what teachers are going through and having possibly 30 students in the classroom. So that idea of supportive grace, I think, can go a long way. And part of that is also understanding, and this isn't an aside, this can be a webinar by itself, understanding the idea that family and cultural influences may differ from the teacher, and the family may differ. That difference does not mean that anything needs to be fixed. It means that there is an understanding that there is a difference, and that's just what that is. And as a educator, understanding that the different things that affect me and affect my idea may not be the same as the family that I'm serving. And also goes to the same idea of recognizing that we all have different biases and understanding that those different biases may play a role in how we interact with families. So thinking of our interaction and connecting with our families through those different lenses can also help in advancing all of those things that you all put earlier that you're already doing and how you can build them. I am out of my time, because my last slide was an action step, what you can do on your own. But I just want you to think about which KTAC report component you will focus on, and those three were aligned teaching and learning, aligned assessment, or cross-sector partnerships. And then what is one goal that you can do that will bolster what you're already doing? I'm thinking of the lens of how does this build a relationship? I'll go back to through the frameworks. How can I begin early? How am I using strength-based conversations? Giving supportive grace in those partnerships. And the other one was thinking of how this interaction builds the relationship. So I know I went really, really fast. I hope it just helps you to just think of using these three focuses and then this framework to add to what you're already being successful in. So thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Appreciate it. Lots of great ideas there, and I'm glad that everyone will be getting the chat and all the information so you can have a chance to reflect and mull over it. So I'm Grace Araya, and I'm the Director of Community Systems Statewide Supports at Illinois Action for Children. And what I do there is I manage a team and we provide training and technical assistance to early childhood collaborations across the state. So in different parts of our states, groups of people, including teachers, parents, health providers, have come together and said, you know, we want to improve outcomes for children and families in our community. And so we support that group and their efforts. In terms of my background, I've also started off as a teacher. I actually started off as a teacher assistant and head teacher and so on in an early learning program in Chicago and Rogers Park, where I was later the program director and had been there for about 15 years. And so my approach to this particular webinar is really wanting us to examine values as it relates to family engagement. And so I want to share this quote with you all. It says, core values are the heartbeat to your why. And so when we think about family engagement, there's definitely values that undergird all those efforts. And so values are basic and fundamental beliefs that guide or motivate attitudes and actions. They help us to determine what is really important to us. Values are the motive behind purposeful action. And so we know when we think of like an organization or a program, we all know how important a clearly defined purpose or mission is. But we need to activate values in order to be able to support them. And so purpose-driven organizations and programs, they're really clear about why they exist and how they plan to achieve their objectives. And then also you become better equipped to navigate change, any sort of disruption, right, like we're experiencing now, expectations that come from families, from partners or communities. And so being clear on our values has never been as important as it is now with the global pandemic, social unrest, and the rate of change that we're experiencing, and unlike anything we've ever experienced before. And so values are our cornerstone. They act as pillars, right? So if you could think of, with everything that's going on, all the changes, our values that we hold dear to, they can act as anchors. And so I don't know about you, but I sure could use some stability, and I really look to my values to help me have that stability in this constant change. And so I'd like to pose a question to you, knowing that whether we realize it or not, we actually do lead with our values. And so what values drive your decisions and action as it relates to family engagement? So if you can go ahead and share. I think there's supposed to be a question popping up, but you can go ahead and put it into the chat as well. So what values drive your decisions and actions? So I'm seeing Stephanie saying reliability. Someone, Jenny put in kindness, compassion, caring, happiness, equity. Linda put, I value the family unit as a support for the child. And I know Dr. Taylor typically says this, but feel free, lots of grace as you're putting into the chat. Please don't worry about typos or anything like that. Just go ahead and express your thoughts on this. And so we have some more coming in: open-mindedness, honesty, authenticity. Yes. Families are an essential piece to helping their child maximize success, dependability. These are all really, really great values. And so as we think about our own values, I would caution that sometimes value statements, they can sometimes be adopted without really being internalized, right? So we know if values are internalized, they really act as a compass that leads us in all the actions and efforts that we partake in terms of family engagement. And so many programs put a lot of work into developing value statements. There was a famous book written back in 94 by Jim Collins and his colleague called Built to Last. And they made the case that the best companies adhere to a set of principles called core values. And so today, 80% of what we consider Fortune 500 companies, they publicly share their core values. But if you remember Enron, you can guess what their values were. It was communication, respect, integrity, and excellence. And we know that those values were not really adhered to. And so I like to share 5 core values that really undergird family engagement. And as I share them with you, I'd like for you to reflect on them, because I'm sure these are values that you may have heard of before, or they may be part of your own program values, but really interrogate the degree to which this value has been internalized. And if so, how does it show up? So let me go to the first one. Parents have their children's best interest in mind. They have the right to participate in every decision that directly affects them, their families, and their communities. And so if this is a value that parents do have their children's best interest in mind, then the question is, how does this show up in our action? How do we provide opportunities for parents to participate in decisions that do directly affect them and their children? And so we just want to make sure that that connection is always happening between the value that we're holding and then the opportunities that we're providing within our programs and the way we're interacting with families. So another value, parents and families are not all the same. They come in different shapes, from various circumstances, and with diverse interests. We must be prepared to meet parents where they are. And so just if I'm going to speak from experience, I think this is one of the values that we may believe it, but sometimes it's harder for us to operate in that way. Sometimes the programs that we're operating, how we've defined family engagement can sometimes be rigid. And so just thinking that families are coming from different circumstances, what do we do to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at? How are we flexing and being adaptable to the diversity that we are seeing in families? Okay, now this one is the big one. So this value, there are significant institutional, that means in our own specific programs as well, systemic and structural barriers to parent participation and partnership in our early childhood systems. It is our responsibility to eliminate barriers to parent participation and partnership at all levels of the early childhood system. And so this value is really a recognition of inequities that we see in our systems, realizing that they can actually be barriers for parent participation. So I could remember putting on lots of family engagement events and activities in our program and wondering why parents are not coming or maybe not seeing the level of engagement that we want to see. And so, but if we think about it as what are the barriers that are keeping parents from participating, and consistently asking parents, consistently involving them in decisions and what we plan, the events that we have, and the ways that we're engaging, then we're better able to eliminate barriers, knowing that there are things that can sometimes get in the way of parent participation. So if you could think, just as an example, if you think of a mother who may be a single mother who may have to work several jobs, right? There are specific things in the system as it relates to housing, as it relates to employment, that act as barriers for that particular mother to participate in a way maybe that she'd like to participate. And so knowing that, that helps us to then reimagine how we may be engaging families. Another core value is that it's necessary to engage parents that are representative of the communities that we serve in order to achieve equitable outcomes for children and their families. So one point I'd like to make about this is that really family engagement and equity are connected. So if we're wanting to engage, and I've seen equity come up as a value, if equity is a value, that is connected to family engagement. So the degree to which we engage families in an authentic way and families are represented is the degree to which we're going to see equitable outcomes. And so I know we're making great strides as a state. We're really moving towards this, but we certainly definitely have a lot of work to do as it relates to family engagement and making sure that families are a part of the decisions that affect their lives. And the last one, the allocation of sufficient resources towards sustainable parent engagement efforts is a direct expression of our values. So we all know the saying that says, put your money where your mouth is, right? So in this case, it's allocating resources to what we say is our values. And so if we value family engagement, then we do really need to make sure, take a look at our programs and make sure that we are allocating resources, bodies, to be able to do this work. I remember my family support staff used to say always, Grace, family engagement is not only our responsibility, right? And so as Iris also alluded to, we know sometimes in teaching, we realize our responsibility, yes, is to teach children, but children are in families are in communities, and so that engagement is being a very critical piece to seeing the outcomes that we want to see. And part of it is making sure that we are allocating resources, and time being a resource as well, to family engagement and everyone being in it together. And so I just wanted to be sure that just to ground us in the values as we continue this conversation in the webinar today, to talk about specific strategies that we want to make sure that we really align to values that will support strategies for family engagement. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jaclyn Vasquez.
Thank you, Grace. I just want to do a quick sound check, make sure everyone can hear me. The little icon at the top with the hand raise, if you can just click on that. Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. All right, so that's me. I am the current Associate Director of the Early Development Instrument at Erickson Institute. I'm in the Policy and Leadership Department under the direction of Dr. Christina Pacione-Zayas, who you'll be hearing from in a little bit here. But I'll give you a little bit about my background. I started my career as a teaching assistant out in the rural countryside in Illinois. I became an early childhood educator. I taught first grade in Oak Park. I taught pre-K in the city of Chicago in Brighton Park. And through my time as an educator, I had 3 different classes back to back, and really felt that, with my little ones, I had an open door policy. I had a lot of parents that supported. And then with my work there, I became a Chicago Public School administrator, and I was the manager of the child parent centers. I had a robust team of leaders from across the city that led this work with high quality early childhood, and with head teachers. We had parent educators that developed a menu base of services to empower and engage families, as well as an outstanding home visiting program that connected families with resources, services, and supports, and community programming. From there, during my time there, I also co-developed a transitions model in Altgeld Riverdale, which is work that I currently still work on across the state, and thinking about transitions and working between the home, the school, early childhood, and elementary classrooms together. And that brought me to Erickson. So the work that I do in the Early Development Instrument is really working and connecting with communities across the state to really think about how we're bringing and taking a look at our systems and using data to robustly support and enhance what's happening holistically in the lives of children and families. Really thinking about using data to align systems and identify better resources and supports, and move data to action to policy. So that's a little bit about my background. And thinking about this presentation today was really important, that I wanted to reflect on my time as, in working with families, but also as an administrator, and what we do in communities to think about empowering and engaging families. Quite often we hear the term engagement, but it's not often coupled with empowerment. And I think that that's a really important term that is a part of this conversation today. And you'll hear very similar themes through my portion of the presentation that you've heard, but I think it's really important that we hear them and that we actively think about it and continue to practice and implement it in our everyday work. So research says that, and as what we know as well, as children continue to matriculate through the grades, partnerships from families tend to decline. I always felt very honored being the first educator, one of the first educators, to really build that sound foundation on which could be built upon, and parents could continue to work and engage in the school system and be empowered in the school system, but also to really develop that love of learning and partnership. I think partnership was always a really key word, because it wasn't me leading and it wasn't anybody else leading. It was a partnership of mutual respect and understanding coming together. And what we know in research is that when families are involved, as you saw previously with Iris and Grace, is that children have, it really helps for them to reach their fullest potential. They can get higher grades, they can get better test scores, better attitudes, behaviors, and just to succeed overall. So here's a fun fact. If we think about a child's sleeping hours and we remove that out of the 24 hours in the day, we know their waking hours and how many hours they're actually spending in the school. More than 85% of their waking hours are spent primarily at home or outside of the school. So what does that mean? If we want the best for and most effective education for our kids, we need to involve our families. And I think that that's really important, not just to involve, like I said, but to think about how we're going to move forward and engage. So what you heard with Grace and previously, I'm talking about values, is really where I like to begin when I'm thinking about how we're going to begin with family engagement. Now, I know typically there's a lot of different types of family engagement. Sometimes it's, the kickoff of the school year, or a letter, or a beginning phone call. But I always like to begin with critical self-reflection and self-evaluation. And, where Grace was talking about values, I think it's really important that we stop and reflect personally on our own personal beliefs, thinking about who we are, what do we believe in, what are our values. Also thinking about, when we're talking about beliefs, under beliefs comes child rearing practices. What do we believe, and what's different for us, and really honing in on our biases as well. Thinking about race, poverty, homelessness, language. It's truly important to identify one's own hidden biases. There are really great self-reflection tools to help you begin to think through this. And when I started this, I think it was interesting to sit down. It was uncomfortable at first to sit and kind of like, I'm going to sit here and think about what I believe, or my background, or really start thinking what biases mean. But the more you do it, the more practice you get into. I think it's a really good practice to do often. And then once you are comfortable in reflecting by yourself, it's really great to bring your team in as well. A reflection on assumption of roles. Now, Grace had already, and Iris had already touched on this part as well, but families have different ideas about their roles versus the school's idea of roles. So if you think of traditionally family engagement, it's been defined as parents participating in a scripted role to be performed. Usually this role is a social construct, and it's driven by mainstream white middle class values. So if we're thinking about some of the typical parent involvement activities that have taken place in the past, happened during the school day, or mandatory volunteer time for some parents for functions, or to come to parent-teacher conferences, that would be identified as even a family engagement night. But what we want to do is to be aware of what these roles may be, and just understand that these traditional involvement of roles are often outside of different cultures. Different cultures may reflect different roles and different values that may not belong to that specific traditional version of parent engagement. So what we want to do is reflect on that, and then start thinking about what are some non-traditional ways of engagement. That being said, again, the evaluation of institutional racism, taking a look at what activities or engagement looks like that's present in classrooms, in the school system, community-wide, district-wide, taking a look and just thinking about how that is played out on a daily basis. Communication and information exchange. You'll hear me say communication quite a few times. I think the misunderstanding, and probably most conversations in any business or any day-to-day exchange can come from lack of or miscommunication. So it's really important that we have open lines of communication, or that we at least try to open those lines and provide as much information and as much communication as possible. And then using this information to then reimagine what your program is, to continue to robustly build out your program and develop your program. Let me see if I can click to the next slide. So I think it's really important, as we're developing and critically reflecting, and as we're getting to know families and we're connecting with our families, we want to think about what are the barriers and what are the assumptions we have to these barriers. What types of challenges do your families face? What are the barriers to engaging with families? I think it's really important to engage with data and with contextual information, with the lived experiences of your families and others in your communities, so that you have a better idea of understanding what resources are available for your families, what their experiences are, and what their needs are as well, and then asking them what they would need in order to better support them. I see that we have 2 polls up, and I would like you to go ahead and think about what types of challenges do your families face on the left side here, and then what are the barriers to engaging with families. So I'll go ahead and give you a couple moments to think about this, and then go ahead and type that in. Transportation, poverty, housing insecurity, immigration status. Absolutely. Literacy, language. There we go. Access to technology. And, you know, and thank you for bringing up, you know, access to technology right now as well. Specifically in thinking about everything we're doing and moving forward with parent engagement, it's crucial that we're thinking about what does parent engagement look like virtually? What does this mean to engage with our families virtually in COVID-19? We're going to have to, and there's a lot of different hurdles on the educator side too, thinking about how they can directly communicate, what are the district guidelines for communication, but how are we going to connect to make a robust two-way bidirectional conversation to help create support for our children that may not be in the classroom with us. Let's see, we also have transportation, loss of job, unemployment, illness, food insecurity, health issues. Over here on barriers to engaging with families, work schedules that conflict with school hours, different cultural perceptions of parent involvement. Many parents work multiple jobs and lack technologies, overwhelmed with work and other children, time. Thank you all for answering. And if you have any others that you'd like to add, please feel free to add those in the chat, even though we took down the polls at the moment. So thinking about, you know, these barriers and to participation, engagement, empowerment, some of the things that we want to think about as we're developing our programs and as we're developing what this could look like moving forward, we want to think of some key characteristics of effective participation. Some of these you've already heard throughout the presentation today. Empowering parents. Empowered families as advocates and active participants in the education process really and truly can enhance the experience for every child and the experience for educators and families to come together and have a really great partnership that can continue on through the years as families can continue to support the school and help other parents to come in and support the process and development for their children as well. Collaborative and bidirectional. That is part of empowering parents. We have to be collaborative, and it's a two-way partnership. Now, will all parents come in ready to be, you know, collaborative and ready to, you know, say, okay, let's sit down and make these plans? You know, this is a relationship. Relationships have to be built on trust, and sometimes we have to be, in the next bullet point, you'll see, very proactive in reaching out to begin building that trust. We have to remember, as it was previously stated, you know, there are different backgrounds and different beliefs and different cultural values and also different experiences with the school system that may not make everyone ready to engage in a collaborative conversation. We'll have to build that trust. We'll have to be proactive. We'll have to be responsive, and we'll have to be flexible in the nature of what does this participation look like. You'll see the term here, cultural humility, which is exactly what I was talking about in thinking about self-reflection and critical reflection. It's really a lifelong process of self-reflection, self-critique, and where you're not only going to learn about other cultures, but you're really going to take a deeper examination of your own beliefs and cultural identity. And that is really important, to know who you are and to help, and as Iris had stated, just recognizing we're different and understanding that that's part of the communication process as well. some additional strategies to support as we're coming in now. We're facing a lot of different structures moving into the fall. Remote learning, hybrid learning. I don't know many that are still doing completely in person, but when we're thinking about a welcoming school, not just the brick and mortar, it's really important that families feel that the school has made every manner or every effort to reach out and welcome them and engage them as part of the school community. They want to feel inclusive. We want to make sure that we're offering multiple languages and interpretation. We're providing parent coordinators, even parent programming. Thinking about when we're doing welcoming school communities, if we have a history of engaging and empowering parents, engaging those parents to reach out to new parents and help them feel comfortable, feeling connected and learning about the program through the voice of other parents would be really fantastic. Learning connections. There are some really great parent programs out there. For one, I would, off the top of my head, I think of Opening Doors out in the Puertas, a fantastic parent curriculum. There's for parent rooms or parent engagement educators out there. Also, I know this has been said before, so I won't stay too long on it, but building equitable relationships intentionally. Thinking about your program, again, going back to that self-reflection, taking a look in your classroom, pairing up with your team to think about what that means for your program. And then access, ensuring all families have access and have that relationship that they feel that they can build with you. And then empowerment. Of course, you've heard us say empowerment, but how are you going to empower parents? Are you going to develop a plan together? Are you going to have that discussion of what would you like to do? How would you like to be involved? And how can we continually communicate? Getting their input is part of that partnership building. Inviting, like I said earlier, inviting other families to reach out and then allowing children to attend events. I know that that's really hard, and when we're able to go back into in-person learning, well, maybe it's a way to identify how the high school students that may need hours to come in and help support, thinking about flexible hours, not just offering opportunities in the daytime, but offering in the after-school hours. And then just engaging families, again, on many different levels. But ensuring that there's language access, thinking about race and equity professional development series for teachers and administrators. So when we're engaging, it's helping with our self-reflection and our constant growth. Coaching, thinking about, when I said data earlier, really taking a look at data, effectively sharing that out with parents as well and getting their input to start understanding what's happening in the lives of your children and families and community. And then I think it's always really important for community building and parent meetings to think about, I know many schools have like a BAC or a PAC, which are parent advisory committees, bilingual advisory committees consisting of parents that come together that often are part of the electing principal selection panels or often, reviewing budget and support. Identifying parents to be a part of these different programs is a really great step forward for empowerment as well. So finally, I just challenge you to challenge your assumptions. Critically reflect with your team and do it often. You may want to start off once a month. You may want to continue to do it once a week. Communication, 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 and don't forget to empower. And of course, always ask for help. I thank you all. I appreciate it. And now I'm turning this over to Dr. Christina.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to do a sound check as well to make sure that everyone can hear me. If you can hit the raise your hand icon. All right, I see your hands. Thank you. Super excited to be a part of this rock star panel. You have absolutely the best and the brightest across this great state of Illinois on this webinar. As you can tell, we are all speaking very much the same language. And I'm here to kind of give you a little bit of a policy and kind of 30,000 foot level picture in terms of how we're thinking about family engagement and how the state is organizing itself to really lift up family engagement. The fact that Sergio is in a director position says a lot in terms of our commitment. That particular department did not exist. So that should be sort of an indication of how we are thinking about how we can improve and double down on our investments. I believe it was Grace that had pointed that out in terms of, how much we are spending towards family engagement. So I'm going to move us along. Just a little, background about myself. I'm the Associate Vice President of Policy at Erickson. You can read and kind of see what I oversee there, but just to give you a little flavor of where I come from, born and raised in Chicago to two community organizers, so it flows through my DNA to always be, thinking about the collective and working in a collective capacity to affect change and policy in ways that really set us all up to live our best lives. I spent a lot of time as a community school director in Little Village. That was while I was in graduate school focused on education policy. I knew I wasn't going to go the faculty route and thought it would be really important to be on the ground. And that's really where I had some extraordinary experiences working very closely with parents and families, particularly to operationalize a vision where our schools are hubs for community action. We stay open year-round on the weekends, all the way till 8 o'clock at night, offering enrichment early childhood education, as well as youth leadership and adult education. So I definitely reviewed budgets with parents. As Jaclyn had mentioned, we did not play when it came to our parent empowerment work. From there, I worked in Chicago Public Schools as a violence prevention coordinator in Humboldt Park in Chicago, and did a lot of work as well to really move the needle on attendance, on behavior and academics in a high school setting, and knew that I needed to ensure that we had strong relationships with families and our community partners, so much that we dedicated an entire floor on our high school for family and community space, so that we can ensure that we have our walls extending into the community. And it was there while I was working in violence prevention that I realized, wow, early childhood is where it's at. I loved working with young people, but needed to cross over to the early childhood side, and I have been a faithful disciple ever since. So I went to the Latino Policy Forum to direct education there. That education agenda was specifically early childhood focused, and then crossed over to Erickson 4 years ago to set up the policy and leadership shop. And as you know, Erickson has been in the game for over 50 years. We were born out of policy, specifically in response to Head Start and ensuring that we have a workforce that can support the needs of that specific legislation. And so here we are today. And so I'm going to walk you through a couple of pieces. As I mentioned, policy and procedure. I'm also kind of pseudo wearing my Illinois State Board of Education hat. I sit on the board. I'm really proud to be representing early childhood on the board, as well as family and community engagement, and having been a ground person. And so what I wanted to make sure you all were aware of are some of the resources and some of the ways that we've been doing family engagement pre-pandemic and during the pandemic. And so one of the pieces I'm putting this in the chat box for you all. Everybody has really spoken to, the core elements of family engagement. And this particular document in the chat box I put comes from the Birth to Third Continuity Project, which was initially funded by the State Board of Education. And there's a family engagement framework in really plain terms to assist you with understanding the different elements of it and how you can leverage opportunities. So I wanted to make sure you all had that. I'm actually going to be putting quite a few links in the chat box, and I know that I was told that the chat will get shared with everyone so that you can come back to these. So let's go through a little bit of, what things look like pre-pandemic. So as I mentioned, Sergio, his role was new in terms of establishing this family engagement department. There had been family engagement frameworks before. There had been, family engagement initiatives. But I think the establishment of making it a part of the infrastructure says a lot. And I'm giving you all a little goodie in the chat box. It's the organizational chart of the State Board of Education. So what you can see is where the family engagement department sits, as well as all the other departments that you may interface with, in case you ever wondered how we structured ourselves. I want to also give a shout out to several different parent engagement programs. Specifically, I'm highlighting the Parent Mentor Program. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with that. And the reason why I want to kind of shout it out is that this too is funded by the State Board of Education, and it is a model that has been developed over the past 20 years. And so that essentially the model is there's a coordinating organization that's based in Chicago, but parent mentors are all throughout the state. And essentially, they recruit parents who are interested in supporting classroom teachers. And they place those parents in classrooms from pre-K all the way up through high school. They provide training to those parents in terms of how to navigate the school system, how to organize, how to support the classroom in and of itself. And the majority of parent mentors are moms. They are immigrant moms. They also have expanded to other communities. So we have African American moms. We have a few dads in the mix. But they've done a pivot with COVID-19 that I think is really important. You all should know. So they're not, obviously, because most school districts are not going to be doing in-person. They have modified their model to make it a mobile parent mentor model. In Spanish, they call it padres mentores ambulantes. And essentially, these same parents are going to be working directly with the classroom teacher to identify families who may be struggling with connectivity, with social services. And these parent mentors are going to serve as those kind of case managers to refer them or to do, for example, some outdoor learning activities for children whose parents may not be able to support them as deeply. And so I think it's an amazing, pivot that is creative, that is leveraging the talent, the commitment that parent mentors across the state have to really fill in the gap. There's Jaclyn had mentioned, and actually what I'll put right here in the chat in case you want to look up those parent mentors, that's their website, so you can look into them. Jaclyn had mentioned Abriendo Puertas, Opening Doors, which is an amazing early childhood parent engagement curriculum. And it was conceived in Spanish and English, and it serves a similar purpose as the parent mentors, although it's not to have parents in the classroom. It's really to acclimate parents to the schooling process and really understanding that they are their child's first teacher, irrespective of their own level of education or comfort in schools. And so that's a model that the Latino Policy Forum has been sending out across the state in partnership with community-based organizations. So I put that link in the chat so that you could contact them if you're interested. I believe Kofi was mentioned, and Kofi is another parent engagement organization that does deep work in advocacy and specifically in training of parents to really push the needle on ensuring that parents have that voice, that space in schools that's not tokenized, that is meaningful and authentic. And there's your link there, and they also are statewide. And then I was thinking about like school districts. I mean, you all are obviously doing amazing things, but one in particular that we've been working closely with through Jaclyn's work with the Early Development Instrument is in Skokie. And District 69, when we were starting to partner with them, I think what I was so impressed with is they had 4 parent liaisons for their district, each one representing a different or multiple languages. because I think there's like 40 plus or 70 plus languages spoken in that particular district. And, you know, those liaisons really just served as connection points for families to, you know, get them enrolled, to help direct them to services. I mean, that model of really leveraging the parent-to-parent, peer-to-peer connection seems to be working. And this particular, thank you, Jaclyn, 80 languages almost over there. This particular model was just really highlighted and rewarded. They just won a federal grant for the next 5 years, and they're going to be adding a 5th parent liaison there. And so I just thought that that was pretty inspiring and something to kind of consider. And then the last piece, because oftentimes when we think about parents, we've been socialized to just think about moms. And there's an organization that's doing some amazing work across the state, Fathers, Families, and Healthy Communities. And they particularly have an early childhood model that engages young fathers, and specifically their focus is on African American fathers and really kind of attending to needs from that very culturally responsive aspect. And so I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of kind of the players in this field to think about how to leverage their resources, their opportunities. So I'm going to move us along to where we're at kind of now. So pre-pandemic, we had already put this in the budget, but as you all know, Illinois' budget has got some challenges. And so we wanted to establish a new department, the Student Cares Department. And we are just super excited because we just hired a director, Molly Yui Edmonds, who is, she's coming from actually the Department of Children and Family Services, specifically around making and facilitating those connections between schools and DCFS. So this is like a great, kind of organic, transition to another state agency. And essentially what I'm super excited about this department, it's really about connecting the agency and Illinois students and families to address concerns about student well-being, student safety. That little org chart that I had put in earlier, you can check it out again to see where it sits. And, as a result of the CARES funds, that was the federal legislation that came through in response to COVID, we were able to put together the resources to establish this department. Specifically the GEARS funds, which is the, let me see here, Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. $2.5 million is going into establishing this department, staffing this department, ensuring that the resources are there essentially to work closely with school districts as well to support family engagement and training. There's ideas around ensuring that we have a family needs assessment, that we have trauma-informed professional learning, that we have screenings for mental health, that we have family engagement and coping readiness and well-being checks that have been increased. So all of those pieces are going to be housed in the Student Cares Department. And I'm just really ecstatic that, we have a leader like Molly coming through to do that particular work. So I'm going to move us along to, I think this is my last slide, but this is about to be a bulky one, y'all, so hold on to your seats. We've got quite a bit of guidance that has come out of the State Board of Education I want to make sure you are aware of. It's, everything from transitions and our learning recommendations. So I want to make sure you all have the transition documents. So this came out in June, towards the end of June, and this was the transition for closing out the school year and also for planning for the summer and what summer school will look like. And so that was actually done, or I'm sorry, I am mistaken. No, this was the joint one that was done with Illinois Department of Public Health and the State Board of Education in anticipation of reopening the school year, yes. We've just had so many documents coming out of ISB that, sometimes it gets a little confusing. Anyway, so this particular document, it came out at the end of June, and then there was a companion FAQ that gets updated on a regular basis. And so you'll see when you open up this particular link, the FAQ, that it'll show you at the top when it was most recently updated, and then it'll show you with the questions which specific ones were updated at that point. So it's a great document to constantly, you might want to bookmark it on your computer so that you can, continue to come back to it and reference it as you're thinking about how you are transitioning. Now, even with that, ISB has put out an early childhood block grant transitions FAQ, and I know that that's big in this particular group because that's all your world. And so I wanted to make sure that you all got that. And same kind of setup in which it is essentially providing you with the date. It's most recently updated, and I think it came out July the 21st. And it goes through some of the kind of like operational pieces. There's supposed to also be some kids guidance, the Kindergarten Individual Development Survey guidance, that will be coming out shortly. And I'm trying to think. I believe that there's going to be some additional guidance around special education, early childhood special education. So for all of our sped folks. Somebody just asked, what is Molly's last name again? Molly Yui Edmonds. If her name is on that org chart, and if I can get that org chart back up, just so that you can do a quick reference, you'll be able to quickly locate her and, get in. And let me put that here in the chat box. There you go. Okay, so back to the last piece, the big kahuna. Jaclyn actually was a part of the group that helped to put together the learning recommendations, which just came out last week, I hope. I mean, these days blur. Point is, it's 103 it's 103 pages. It's a lot to get through, very comprehensive. There are over 50 individuals that were involved in this creation of this document. And I wanted to just point you to, you noticed in the chat I put specific pages to reference around family engagement. So out of these 103 pages, family came up 39 times, so almost a little over a third of the document has family references. Again, pointing to like what Grace had said, we can't just think about children and young people as individual, units. We have to think of them in the context of their family, their community. And the pages that I'm calling out here are, family engagement on page 13. Page 33, there's a section there that is great about honoring and engaging caregivers and community. It's actually under the multilingual education section, but I think it's incredibly relevant for all children. And then pages 58 through 73 cover specific recommendations for birth through second. And what's great about how the document is structured, it tells you there's like a table that kind of breaks down everybody's responsibility. The responsibility of the administrators, the educators, the caregivers, and the children themselves. And so you'll see some real concrete ways to kind of go through that. And so the last piece I want to kind of talk about is money, right? I know that's your big question. We've got a year ahead of us that's about to be unusual in so many different ways. And I've mentioned these care dollars that I think everybody should sort of be aware of. So, there was that government emergency education relief, and $50 million the governor directed to the State Board of Education. That was $40 million going to K-12 and $10 million specifically going to early childhood. And for that early childhood piece, it's to really round out our infant early childhood mental health consultation model and a text messaging project for parents to really support them through this period. And then there's additional funds that are going to go to PFA and PI programs in impacted areas with COVID. So disparate impact, they will have access to some additional dollars for the purchase of home learning materials, PPE technology, and additional staffing. Now, you all have heard about CARES, and there was $569 million in CARES. But of that, there was the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And so $512 million went directly to school districts to use as how they need to prepare for this school year. And the remaining $57 million ISB is directing specifically for the purchase of devices, connectivity, remote learning, training, and virtual coaching. And the last piece, I want to make sure you all are aware of this when this opportunity presents itself. There was $7.5 million put aside for remote learning training that is inclusive of training and support for families. So I'm going to stop right there because I know that's a ton of information. And I will make sure that this all these links I have in a document so you don't have to scroll through a text. You can be able to see it. So thanks so much for having me. And I really want to just shout out all the educators, all the family resource coordinators, administrators. You all are really keeping us afloat. This work is so necessary, and I thank you every day for everything that you have given of yourselves. And the children of Illinois are so lucky to have you.
So now you all see why we gather together this prestigious group of presenters. To all of you, my colleagues, Dr. Pacione Zayas, Iris, Jaclyn, Grace, Sergio, thank you so much for joining us. Look how it just took all of us to come together just to present this information to you all. And our North Star is truly the Kindergarten Transition Advisory Committee report. That report says we must come together with cross-sector partnerships, collaborations. And so as I was given this opportunity to do this, I really want to thank ECPL for allowing me to say, you know what, can I bring in Illinois Action for Children? Great, yes. Christina, yes. And not only that, but for each of their organizations. Each organization has its own scope of work. And so the flagpole that these things have to go up and come back down is very, very high for this collective effort. And I believe the fact that all of these leadership roles were willing to say, yes, what can we do to come together? It just shows the support that all of you have. What you're looking at now, this is a save the date. This particular series here is a direct result of webinars that took place since the pandemic from March until June, where people were putting in this either in the chat or in the survey results saying, we need more, and this is exactly what we need. So please save the dates for that. Those announcements will be coming up from ECPL soon. Save the date for the upcoming Illinois AEYC conference. I want to just echo what my friend Dr. Pacione Zayas said. None of this happens without you. None of it happens without you. Every moment that you can, close everything down, turn the laptop down, turn the TV off, put the phone down, and allow yourself to rest. We need you. Even as a consultant, who am I consulting if you are not here? So you are so needed and so deeply appreciated. I just show yourself grace. Iris talked about showing grace to families. Please show yourself the grace to relax, to relate, and release every moment you can. I will work very closely with Karen Abneson. We're going to take all of these resources and create one page, including the ones that you see here. Lots and lots of resources, some with the Head Start, so many resources, some that are COVID-19 specific. We will create one page, and everyone that participated today will receive that. Again, my esteemed colleagues, thank you so very much. Sergio, I will definitely be in touch with you offline. Thank you all for your time today. I'm going to turn this back over